Good afternoon, everybody out there in the world of Futureproofing Now. This is our third webcast of the day, exploring a topic that we've got a lot of passion for. We're looking at innovation, technology, how things get led in the future, and we've just had two webcasts based on how to lead and how to fan sports in the future. Now it's how do we play sports in the future. So if you weren't particularly somebody in the industry that led sports, and if you weren't a big fan of sports, for the most part, if you're a walker, if you're a fisher, if you're a dart player, if you're a basketball player, you definitely play sports. So this is probably the most inclusive topic that we've got covered today in our set of three webcasts. I want to introduce my fellow co-host, Andrew Cates. How are you, Andrew?
Super excited about this topic.
And unlike our couple of topics, we've set this up where it's just going to be me and you. We're going to actually go through a whole bunch of different trends about the future. We're going to weigh in on them and give some sense of some stuff, and also give some breadcrumbs in terms of what we want to do in the future on this topic as well. Because I think this is a webcast today, but we're using this as kind of the launch of a research venture that we want to do focused around sports and innovation technology. So why don't we weigh into it? I know we've explained this in the previous two webcasts that, Moneyball, great book, great movie. In fact, when I saw the movie for the first time, I sat behind a boyfriend and girlfriend, and the girlfriend definitely was not interested in sports movies, but it turns out she loved the movie. And I remember her exclamation. It's like, it really wasn't a sports movie at all. It was about how to see things differently. And so with some level of intention, we've entitled this series of webcasts Digiball. And instead of statistics changing how we look at sports and how we play them, we're looking at how technology has changed the sports we lead, fan, and play. And here we are as always. And I mentioned in a previous webcast, this is probably around our 50th webcast, Andrew. So I think something like 97% of bloggers or podcasters don't ever make it to their 50th episode. So we'll give ourselves a little bit of a pat on the back, right?
We've made it across the ribbon. It's the finish line. We've made it across that first hurdle.
I know. What's your line always? It's taken us like years to become an overnight success, right? So
That's exactly right.
we usually have two or three kind of things just to get people thinking about the topic. This was interesting. I know Google had formally made the offer last year. It's still going through some level of competitive review, because I think a lot of the people in the fitness industry are petrified about Google getting in deep into fitness. They've made a $2.1 billion, that's billions, Andrea, deal to buy Fitbit. And there's a lot of worry amongst the incumbent people. It's like, oh, Google's open system of letting us play with all of their technology won't happen anymore because they're just going to go exclusive with Fitbit. So I don't know. Do you have wearables, Andrea?
I do have wearables, and I have a love-hate relationship with them because they tell me a lot of things about what I don't care about.
What do you care? What would you like it to track that it doesn't track currently?
I don't know. It's a proxy for like, how long am I going to live? And am I going to be able to be mobile for all of those years? And all I hear is like, all the things that are maybe a route to that answer, but really they can't give me the answer that I'm looking for, which is, am I going to have an independent lifestyle for many, many years to come? They don't know. So they tell me my heart rate.
Oh man. In researching this topic, there is a startup out of Toronto, of all places, that is focused on what are those lifestyle considerations that we will, through AI, automatically send to you that allow you to age better or give you a better chance of aging and all the independent stuff. So it's maybe there'll be a watch that'll do that in the near-term future. So here we are sitting November. It's still the pandemic. Cases are going through the roof. And there's a sense, I didn't think about this in the early days. I remember back in late February being in a gym going, should I really be here? And I think generally a lot of people are saying they're probably not going to go to gyms afterward, which has some real long-term consequences in terms of both the gym industry and also long-term, like just our fitness perhaps. So I'm not too sure where you are fitness-wise post-pandemic, Andrea. I know by spending time on Zoom all day, my fitness is definitely not being where it was back in February.
I
Yeah.
think one of the interesting parts about this is everything that I said I would never do, I'm doing. So I said I would never, ever take an online class of any sort because, for fitness, because that just wasn't as good as I've always had a personal trainer. And I thought that was an addiction I was entitled to. But interestingly, hated it, didn't want to do it, didn't want to do it. It was the only option. I would never go back to my live trainer. So there's that. And then what I really like is there are all these really interesting offshoot companies, partly because people, yoga studios, fitness studios were closing. And so to me, these hybrids are super interesting. So you asked about things like a Fitbit or, something that's giving me, output of what I'm doing in a gym or in a workout. But the hybrids are interesting because there's, for instance, an intersection between the healthcare rules changing and the fitness needs. So for instance, there's the prehabilitation where
Yeah.
you can now find out, how do I keep my knees in good shape so I don't have to go to an orthopedic surgeon in the future? And so there's a lot more hybrid situations. And some of these are medical things that you couldn't charge for before in the United States because you didn't have a code. So now that that's loosened up, there's this staying alive and staying fit, and the whole wellness piece is coming into it in a new way. So that combined with the fact that it's so damn convenient, I'm not sure I would personally ever go to a gym.
Well, I mean, there's the promise too, though, right? I mean, I think most of our healthcare system is based on treating an issue as opposed to maybe getting to prevention. And I think up until now, most of these tools, and I've used them all, they've just been almost just not smart enough to be helpful in my life. And I think we're maybe reaching a point where they are starting to be smart enough to know what I'm doing, and be able to be able to provide some intelligence that I might not be able to access myself. I know we live and breathe. You're Silicon Valley. I live in one of the top 5 tech hotbeds in the world. We're always wondering in terms of investments and where it's going. And this was really a hot spot in 2018, still in 2019, but it certainly cooled off a little bit. And I think it's not like we haven't, like, generally people have invested more in their fitness through this pandemic. I think it's more, if you have an asset, much like most industries, it's not a good place to be. Like, it's more around how do we configure things and how do we use technology that is light on the assets to create stuff. So still, we're at 2017 levels, I guess, but it is interesting how it's cooled a little bit. Any
So
thoughts on that?
I have a different view on this, and
Yeah,
I have a thought on statistics and market data that I call the waterbed effect. And so when something, if there's a finite market, then when you push down here on the waterbed, something goes up and vice versa because it's a finite, the pie hasn't changed.
yeah,
So what I know you believe, because I'll convince you of this, is that there is something unstated in this data, right? So let's imagine startup investment in fitness tech financing has gone down. That might be true. But let's look at these next slides when we look at platform investment, the
yeah,
pent up needs that people have, the clothing that's being sold, that's leisure clothing, that is not even a market before. Like, who would wear leisure clothing? There was no even category. And so you and I probably look at this the same way, which is, yes, from the old answers to old questions, yeah, startup investment in fitness tech is down. But I contend that we are still, I love the Nike ad that says, basically, we are all athletes. I
yeah.
don't think people have stopped moving. I don't think people have stopped wearing stuff to move in. I don't think people care less about staying alive, healthier, and more with more independence. So I'm really interested in next year what this looks like, because I think there's a missing element to where is all this gone? Where's the leaky bucket in this data that like the investment in traditional fintech? Yeah, that might have gone down. Like, I'm not going to a gym, but I'm exercising 5 times a day in a different way, and someone's going to fill that need. So that's my look at this, is that we shouldn't be fooled into thinking that people are less interested or that there's less of a market. I think it's just gone somewhere else, and let's find that place.
No, I tend to agree. This almost, in some respects, reminds me a little bit of 2005 social media, where there was just everybody and their cousin had some type of social media startup, and they were by region and by types of people. And all of a sudden there was a huge interest, but then all of a sudden we became 4 or 5 lead kind of dogs that were able to kind of galvanize and actually concentrate and I guess as we call it, blitz scale. I think we're maybe a few years away from that, but it seems like that's where this industry is headed to. From where it's headed, certainly, I've done a lot of work for YMCAs in the past, and so part of me is really concerned about the fact that these temples that just get us out of our houses and actually meeting people and seeing people that have like-minded interest around fitness. There's a stat here: 50% of UK's recreation and leisure centers may actually shutter for good if there isn't some kind of intervention by government, which suggests we're looking at maybe some long-term shifts in terms of how we get our fitness. Wearables are way up, and we were chatting right before this webcast. You definitely know Lululemon and what they've purchased here in a $500 million deal, Mirror. So essentially, the wall of your house becomes your new kind of fitness instructor, right, Andrew?
Yeah, and also, we think about the talent, and unfortunately, it used to be one-to-one, so a trainer would be one-to-one, but this can be one-to-many. And now, of course, since things are recorded and they're sorted and in a library and a resource bank, someone can do something like with a Peloton or a Mirror, explaining it once, and even if it's interactive, the core material is kind of, to me, like what's happening with universities with the flipped classroom. So
Right.
do I need every single person to explain the quadratic equation one-on-one? Or can I have one person have Khan Academy, the core lesson, and then you flip it and you have a lot of people interpreting? To me, that's where things are heading, that there'll be something like on Peloton or a Mirror where it's a served model, but then the customization of my knee is hurting. How can I make sure that I have enough upper body strength? Doing the fitness, like you were asking before, that's where you can monitor and say, am I in equal shape in all the ways I need to be? How do I compare against my peers? That's where I believe the shift is going to change. You don't need as many people teaching the exercise. That's the commodity. But the value now, because that is delivered so in such a widespread manner, now you can have the customization and the community, to your point, Sean. The people who are in the Peloton world, they know each other, even though they live, thousands of miles away from each other. So I think I'm not looking negative at this
No,
one.
it's interesting. Once again, like most technology, could provide a better experience, maybe provide it for cheaper. Some ongoing questions about the ethics of where do all of the jobs go, and the people side of the equation. I think the top 10% of any kind of industry is probably safe because they're so good they can find a way to do stuff. But for the rest of the people in the fitness industry, where do we go, right? So,
and there's a great comment from the audience. Thank you, Craig. This notion of refer physios at the right time. The thought is, we were just talking about just in time, and you can't have just in time if you're not in charge of the just and you're not in charge of the time. So,
that is a quotable quote.
There you go. So just in time in this situation is you might have a routine, you might have a plan, but then at the moment where someone can discern that there's an issue or a problem or a postural mistake that you're making, then they can go in and just in time prevent you from being injured. And I think that's going to be a huge plus in all of these technologies.
Sure. No, I agree at all levels too, right? Elite to kind of the senior citizen that should avoid certain types of activities. I think that there's a full range of that. So smart comment by Craig. We do this annual send up of the top 30 technologies. And as I've mentioned in the 2 webcasts, it's the same thing here. If I look at all 30 of these, there's probably a fitness equivalent. They may call it something different, but they're using all of these different technologies. And certainly one of the pushes from last year's ranking was you really got to break out health tech at 18 because it's a number of different things, and that we need to understand the nuances within that and see if anything breaks from there. So it's interesting. This is kind of, I guess we'll call it the hot or not session here, Andrew. We've got like a wave of about 25 of these things I've teased out, and just, maybe let's just weigh in on each of these. They're all either recent startups or just emblematic of things going on. And so we probably both we're probably doing one of these webcasts, but then jumped on the Apple kind of launch of their new watch And I've seen their commercials where it's just like, there's a voiceover where it's like, well, I bet you don't have a device that can track your oxygen. And there's some smart athlete that comes along. Oh yeah, I have that. It's in my Apple Watch. And so, whether it's finding your elevation or your blood oxygen levels or just your set of activity, within a $400 range, you can now strap that to your wrist and look at all of your biometrics. Interesting development or not, Andrea?
Well, I'm also going to invite the participants today to go into the chat. So we'll start with biometrics, and you can just say hot or not if you feel like like weighing in. And I promise I won't read it until I've weighed in. So biometrics, I think that that's a fancier version of worthless information for me in its current form. So I'm saying not so hot. I keep trying to, I want it to want to be something that I use and value, but it's so many numbers of stuff that seems on the surface like I should care. But as I said, fancier versions of worthless information for me. So not hot.
Doing more of the stuff, particularly outside in winter, I find having something on my wrist that I can look at. I actually like this. I will probably get one of these for Christmas for sure. So I'm going to say hot. I do, as a sidebar story, remember somebody in the low technology era who went on dates and had strapped 20 different devices onto him. I forget the guy, but he's well known in the wearable space, and he would track his entire vitals for the entire course of the date. And so it had two levels. One, there's probably some personal feedback from him, but there's also some entertaining quality to it as he broadcasts all of these different metrics online. So
may I just conjecture that perhaps there was never a second date? Ever. If someone walked in like that, it'd be like game over. Not going to do that. All right, moving on.
And if there was a second date, there would be so many questions, right? Why?
So many questions.
I thought my high point of the night was here. Why wasn't it yours? So
yeah.
And I know within the inside baseball of the fitness industry, Apple has launched a wealth of different things associated with the watch. I guess they've now seen that this is an industry unto itself that we need to be part of. And so they've built an entire platform around music and trainers and workouts and a whole raft load of things that suggest that, similar to how maybe Facebook is our social media platform, maybe Apple is making a play to be your fitness platform of the future. Hot or not, Andrea?
Super hot, super hot. And what I would say though is, here's the critical question that we think about. Who has earned the right to own that platform? So for instance, is it for instance, my healthcare provider just gave me Calm, which is an app to let me, I guess, relax. And, that's kind of and they also have the ClassPass. And so the healthcare provider wants to, quote, own the platform relationship, right? Or is it Apple that already has the music? And now it's like, oh, put this music together and you can have a workout. Or is it Peloton that's like, you got the bike, here's the yoga class that goes with it, even though you don't do it on the bike. Oh, here's the community, here's the social. So what we're watching, of course, from the Futureproofing Next perspective is who has permission in this next generation of platform building to own the relationship with the customer, so that that's the connection that is completely sacrosanct, instead of, well, there's music here and there's exercise here and there's Calm here and there's meditation here. So super hot on it. And the big question is, who gets permission? Is it Apple? Is it Kaiser Permanente? Is it Peloton?
Yeah. And much like a lot of the industries we study, we tend to look at certain industries and go, oh, they're different. This is very similar to certain industries that we've looked at before, Andrea, where it's just like, why were those incumbents asleep at the wheel for 15 or 20 years, right? Like a gym could have easily said, we're going to own the digitized fitness space because we see the train coming, and they didn't. So yeah, no, it's interesting. I do think this is hot, but your quote about permission is very interesting.
Like let's look at Lululemon and Mirror. 15 years ago, you wouldn't have ever thought that a yoga clothing company would be competing with a group like Peloton. And yet one acquisition later, there they are. So that's how easy it's going to be to shift power in this platform world.
And I would add on top of Mirror that one of the hottest VC plays for China was also a Mirror lookalike. I think it's called Picture Maybe. And so this is definitely a global phenomenon. All right, let's keep going. Smart clothing. There's a raft of different ones. This one I ran across Sensoria. They had done some stuff, and certainly there's a lot of different companies that are purchasing kind of different smart clothing that monitors your vitals. Hot or not, Andrea?
Not yet hot. I think it's en route to being hot, but not evolved. That's my vote. What's yours, Sean?
I'm going to say not for the sense that what I'm seeing is that AI is able to track a whole bunch of stuff without having to have a wearable. So my biomechanical movements may actually monitor how much effort I'm making. So, when you think about putting something into a piece of clothing, you think about the manufacturing and you think about, oh, does it have to go in the washer, and a whole bunch of implications that really, if I can see it through a visual, so imagine something looking at me as I jog, doing the same amount of tracking. I think this one may actually pass by and actually be supplanted by, some AI and some Internet of Things type of deals. So we'll see. Pandemic design. I know this wasn't specifically made for this. I think they were building this before this, but Unlimitech has a mask that looks at how much breathing exertion you're doing throughout stuff. But I thought, how much different would it have to be to actually make this something that you could work out as your kind of safe against the pandemic? Hot or not, Andrea?
I'm actually saying hot-ish, and I'll say why. It feels as if breathing, I know these are basics, but breathing is, coming into vogue again. Who would have thought billions of years later, we'd be interested in breathing again? But a combination probably of the social acceptability of wearing masks. I know in Asia, whenever we work in Asia, there's no stigma against it. It's just it's commonplace. And so the thought of being able to overcome some of the stigma that is in other places with something where it's really giving you information, the materials are going to get better and better. And it also, not so much for the information minute to minute, but how much pollution did I take in? Things about your oxygenation, the pulse oximeters that you use for your finger. Are there ways that you can really test that through a mask? So I actually think it has potential. And I think it's something that I would say, as in the old days, it's a buy.
Yeah, it's hot-ish as far as I'm concerned. Like this type of technology, like 10 years ago, you probably had to spend $100,000 on a hospital to have. And so it's kind of, I view it as, wow, like it's in the hands and democratized in the hands of a person now. But and I do think masks for at least a certain set of people will be normalized for the next 5 years, right? How can you be absolutely safe you're walking outside if you have some kind of precondition? So I'd say hot-ish. Subscription business models. It seems like nearly every fitness tech company I see has gone the road of, oh, just don't buy it from me. Let's do a monthly subscription together. And so you can have a package of benefits and you can upgrade down the road, and you're not stuck with that same bike forever because you can upgrade for the low cost of something down the road. And obviously Peloton has leveraged that to a fortune in terms of business evaluation. Hot or not, Andrea?
Well, first I wanted to go back one question and say that the comment was that the mask was more of a VO2 max type of device, performance versus protection. And I think that that's really important to talk about, because the ability to diagnose isn't the right, to describe the performance versus the protection. It strikes me that soon we'll have these hybrids. That was the point I was trying to make. Didn't make it strongly enough. So thanks for that feedback.
Agreed. Do not go out with that mask right now and think you're protected, right?
That's right. We also heard that your mic is buzzing. So that's another comment. Here we go. So I will say that we love to quote the book, The Subscription Economy, where there is a condition known as subscription fatigue. I mean, how many more subscriptions can we handle? We have Canva, we have Zoom, we have whatever. It's like, it becomes really exhausting to be subscribed to too many things. So it might be that Peloton got in at the early stage and got its loyal addicts, et cetera. But I do think it's a big opportunity, but I think what'll happen is the bifurcation between the people that are accepted as a subscription versus the wannabes that are kind of not quite the end to end. I think they're going to fall by the wayside. That's my feeling, and that there'll be fewer vendors. Who knows if it's going to be Apple, Google, Amazon again. I'm sure Amazon, I heard that Zoom has fitness classes now. So, I don't want to predict who it's going to be, but a Peloton-like provider, I think that is not good news for the smaller players.
Yeah, I mean, we've always we know that subscription as a business model across most industries is hot, right? I mean, I think we don't want to own cars anymore, and in some respects, we don't even want to own homes anymore. We just want to have the experience of living in them or staying in them. So I think this is very much in line with that. I think the thing for fitness that may steer this to maybe having 30 or 40 different viable subscription manufacturers is we all like our own type of fitness. So I've seen various ones for rowing. I've seen various ones for skating. So I think there may, at least for a time period, be room for enough subscription models based on type of fitness. This one, I got to say, this is my star of the crowd. I saw the Ghost Pacer here, and I thought to myself, for sure, would I want some augmented reality thing that I could run against and actually almost feel like I'm either racing past them, or as much as we believe fitness is just metrics and data and VO2 max and whatever, it really is psychology, right? Run any race and it's like the feeling that you get of passing somebody is so great. I hate to say it. So for me, this was a hot. What about you, Andrea?
Yeah, this is super hot for me. I envision it to be strangely social, right? So the loneliness of jogging, versus, in a way, companionship. And I think it's hot. I think it's strange right now. There's this notion of uncanny valley, which is the description of a sense of artificial intelligence or virtual reality that's so close that you feel like it's a real person, but it's just that weird thing off. So you're in the uncanny valley. So this is a little uncanny valley to me. However, having been on a track team where I ran the second lap of relay races, it'd be cool to have a virtual person front and center, before me and after me to practice with especially the baton pass. I think that would be very cool.
Well, it looks like this one's a Kickstarter project that looks like it's getting funded, because I think.
And Sean, I am going to say, just switch your mic. I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah, I know, it's interesting.
Not doing
It's
its
on
thing.
all day, so I'm going to switch to a mic, and if you're feeling the same thing. So
Yeah.
one
Perfect.
sec.
Yeah, you can switch to the next slide and I can take it.
The integrated gym.
Okay, so I'll start here while you're switching mics. So integrated gym, I believe, is that next level that you were talking about. And what people are thinking of is, in our opinion, too linear. So an integrated gym is literally, and there's a great term I also love called skeuomorph. And a skeuomorph is a visual representation of something that you can't necessarily relate to anymore. So picture on your computer, there's a file folder picture. Well, if you ask somebody 12 years old what that represents, they literally have never seen a physical file folder, I promise you. But it's a skeuomorph. It's kind of this thing that references to something that's no longer relatable. Okay, that was a big explanation for why I think integrated gyms are wrong. So absolutely, integrated gyms are right. But don't take the current gym and just simulate it. This is a great chance to have an integrated experience with, once again, human conversation, social interaction, a team of people. There's so many ways that if you don't start with a limited mindset and the anchoring bias of, yeah, let's exactly do a gym and we're going to do the circuit in an integrated way, interactive with a little bit of teaching. I think that it should completely blow it out of the water with this concept, but I'm afraid people are going to start with this anchoring bias that We have to simulate the gym the way we currently do it. Let's take a kettlebell and swing it. You know, there's so many different ways to create an integrated gym. And if I had time, I would work on this concept. So yes, hot.
I think that's a really good caveat, though. Like, would we build a gym if you had all of the technology available to you in the same way, right? Like, we probably wouldn't. So I think that's a really good point, Andrew. I think being a fan of circuit training and CrossFit and everything, I love the promise of this, though, right? Like, there's nothing right now without human intervention that I've looked at that, tells me that I've just done 10 chest presses, right? This provides at least somewhat the promise of that.
Okay.
And then
I'll start this one and then we
Sure.
might have to switch your mic again. Sorry, I'm saying this. Okay. So AI personal training. It was too complex and expensive to implement human motion analysis and scalable applications. So this, I think, is fantastic because having taken kinesiology, I might be one of the only people on earth that had to take a kinesiology course. But in the day, we would have video of people doing a golf swing, for instance. And then, they had the kind of sensors so that you can see the different muscles and bones. And then they would stop the video. And the examination was, where did the ball end up, right? And so at the moment, it wasn't very intelligent. It was just sort of, basic physics, basic muscle motion, basic kinesiology. Well, now there's so much information on what makes peak performance. And the tweaking of performance from one angle to the next is the difference between peak performer and average performer. So I think it's a coming of age. I think it's super exciting. I think each of us wants to be our best. And I also think that for peak performers, this will eliminate injury. To me, it's a super moment for this field. And it's been a long time coming.
I will just say hot. I love the idea of it being hardware independent, right? You don't need a whole bunch of things around your house, which is now where we are. So, all right. It's funny. I can't remember the woman, but she was on YouTube and she had 25 million hits on her thing. And I'm like, who is this? And lo and behold, I started doing her workouts and she's like a celebrity. So it's like, this is the Netflix of celebrity. There's a company called Fit, FIIT. And they have a whole bunch of A-star fitness people that are the best at the game. And yeah, this is the broadcast medium for it. Hot or not, Andrea?
Yeah. So when we were in a webinar a minute ago, our prior webcast, there's a thought of individuals being able to create their own stardom. And the tools are in the hands of anybody. Anybody can have a webcast, anybody can do a YouTube channel, anybody can do TikTok, whatever they want to do. And you would think that this would be a commodity. And yet there's certain teachers who are more popular. And I think that I would still give it a not hot because I think it's transient. And I think that it's kind of like key influences for a brand. But I think it's great that there is this in between time where people can have a sense of what good is. But I think that the next level is that the platforms will overtake it and there'll be all of the greatness of these individuals that's trumped, sorry, that word, by the platforms being able to offer it on a larger scale. Because I don't think that, I just think ultimately, the same way that talent is bought by a studio in the old days, I think the talent's going to get bought out by a Peloton or a platform.
You may be right. Yeah, I do like the fact that.
So one more try at the mic change.
Oh no!
I know. Sorry.
That's okay.
You can put the next slide up and I'll do it.
For our audience, we had 2 webcasts and this wasn't an issue. So we'll see what happens, but I will move on to the next one.
Okay. So mixed reality. And once again, I would have said not at all, but I am a complete hot on this one. Mixed reality experiences for me started with the entertainment industry when you have on Fortnite rock concerts happening, and that seemed ridiculous. I just attended a virtual conference and it was actually better than the live conference used to be. That never would have struck me as an idea. The virtual reality platform that they used in the conference was actually great. It wasn't, it used to be kind of Second Life, very clunky, very old fashioned gameish, but it's gotten to the point where these Neo experiences are, I think, in some ways better, and they can be personalized and customized. So to me, this is the new normal that should come about, is mixed reality. I'm hot on it, actually.
I will say only I'm hot. Gyms, what we do at gyms is not really what we want to be doing. If you could create something more creative to move our muscles, so be it.
Okay, I couldn't hear it, so I'm going to say that you were hot on that. Is that right? Thumbs up. Okay, thumbs up. Hot on that one. And community fitness. To me, the thing that is missing from everything being at home, to be honest, is the ability to not just compete with others, but go on a bike ride with others, to see things with others. And I know that a lot of these virtual worlds exist as communities. And that's a lot of the reason. We were talking to somebody in London the other day, and she said, yeah, I can't wait for my blue dot. There's kind of a group of people and they all get the blue dot at the end of a workout, and they kind of virtually high five each other. And I also think that people doing things for a cause. I just heard, I was just invited into a community where people were doing a certain type of workout, like in the old days, a fun run or a run for cancer or something like that. So I think that I think the need is stronger than the ability to serve the need.
Excellent. Can you hear me now, Andrea?
Okay, great. So Walter says that your mic's coming through great. So that's good.
Okay.
Thank you, Walter.
Yeah, no, I know a number of people that use Zwift. I think, doing things as a fitness activity together just makes so much more sense, at least for somebody with my psyche. So I'm a big fan on this. Let's see if we can get back in. And under the same guise, social fitness, Strava is a social network for athletes. Just kind of thoughts on this one, Andrea? I always thought Nike had an angle in on this one, and it never, Nike Run Club kind of got there, but it never really kind of went big time. What about yourself?
So I also think that this is, I'm hot on this one. I think that the idea of, just like with the travel industry where people want to travel, but they're limited in their travel, it strikes me that this is the biggest latent need, that there's this huge need for this social network for athletes, and our identities are so linked with the sport that we participate in, the sport that we watch. I mean, I think this is the other thing, is the social network for athletes, but also it extends into fans, it extends into supporting each other, it extends into the training world. So I actually think that that's why, part of why we work out is that sense of connection and belonging. And I'm very, very hot on social fitness for so many reasons, including non-peak performers. So people who aren't trying to compete for the Olympics or compete for a team, but are in a club volleyball or something like that. Probably 80% or 90% of the feeling is the social network. And I think that it needs to be more democratic. Once again, not designed only for athletes in the old mindset, the same way that I was saying, you don't design a gym for gym people. You can look at this so differently. Where shall we go today? What exploration should we share today? What is our shared purpose? And then, oh, by the way, we're going to be doing it on a bike. We're going to be doing it in a shared social environment, and maybe end with a picnic. There's a whole lot more that could be built in if you don't just think of it as pumping iron, hard body mindset with regards to the social network.
Agreed. And under the very same spirit, this one, if this was 20 years ago, I would have launched this as a thing. And in fact, I had this idea called Go which had all the different fitness activities and venues under one roof in a digital world. And so, based out of Germany, there's something called Urban Sports Club, which pretty much brings the people together with the venues, whether they're actual venues or just in a park, which is much more important now, given the fact that having a gym membership really isn't cutting it anymore. So, and it puts it all under one roof as a local social network. What are your thoughts on this one, Andrea?
Well, I think this is one of the craziest things that we have seen as a trend is things are getting very global and very local.
Mm,
And you're identifying with your community, your neighborhood, your local vendors, but you're also realizing that, wow, I could be, Berlin could be my sports club here. We were talking about fans. I could follow a football team in Spain. I mean, it's very fluid, and yet we have so much identity with a lot of these. So the idea of having a local network, I think, yeah, I think it's going to get bigger and bigger, especially, I hate to say it, but post pandemic, when we feel this need to cocoon or to village again, it strikes me that this is a really big idea.
yeah, no, I agree. And then we got into about 5 or 6 different definitions, I guess, a broadening of the sports we play or fitness. So the next 5 or 6 are around just because technology allows us to broaden the scope of what we're actually getting fit for. And so Noom was an interesting one in terms of just, I guess their recognition was, our behavior needs to change, not just like, our diets or the way we exercise. So they've tried to bridge technology with, good behavioral messages and things that you should be getting when you need to be getting them. Hot or not, Andrew?
Hot. We know BJ Fogg has there's a lot of work that's done at Stanford. I'm sure it's all over the place. It's for evil and for good that we can now get people to be addicted to things. And so if you're addicted to bad things, then you are constantly checking your texts and can't get off of social media. But if you have the neuroscience has advanced to the point where if you can use the neuroscience to have one habit at a time, things like put your gym shoes by the door, those types of things, and have little reminders. So if you have 15 minutes free, there's something you can do to stay active all day long as part of an integrated lifestyle. I think it's really great. I also think it addresses the fact that there's a lot of diversity in how we want to be fit. And so it's a body image thing. It's a lifestyle piece. You don't have to just be, in that competitive sports mindset. You can be a person that sat on the bench every time a sports team was picked and still maintain great habits because you can train yourself to do the kinds of things that are available through something like Noom. And no, it's not a commercial. Super hot on this. Super, super hot. I think the neuroscience has finally come of age so that we can do better than we used to.
It's almost like technology, neuroscience, and personalization, all 3 big trends rooted in one kind of purpose here, right? So yeah, definite hot. Sleep fitness. This is something that I don't get regularly in my regular life. My sleep patterns are all over the place. But there's been a lot of investment in technology and understanding of how sleep plays a role in our health. So this is Withings, essentially gives you some pretty detailed stats around your sleep from a turn of a watch. Hot or not, Andrea?
Hot, super hot. I think this is the next science that's come of age, sleep science. I know that WebMD had a lot of people who were doing this in the older days of the internet, questions, dear doctor, I'm not sleeping well. It has gotten so refined, and it's gotten to the point where between the understanding of what happens physiologically, psychologically, and this whole idea that it's so important to our, not just our mental well-being, but our longevity. I think it's very hot.
So my dog barking at me in the morning to get me up is not good enough science to actually get me through this. So
Is your dog wearing a wearable? Because then I might change my mind. And you know
well,
what? A dog needs 4 wearables because they have 4 wrists.
so true, so
So
true, and so
true.
deep, so
So
deep.
true.
I
Well,
would love to. Theoretically, this is hot. For me, pragmatically, I just I don't know if I'll ever get there. So we'll see. kids fitness, and this brings up that, and Fitbit has just come out with their ACE series for fitness of varying levels of kids, 6+ or 12+, depending on the variant of wrist size. I'm not too sure if this is driven by the parents or the kids, but my hope is there's a benefit for both. Hot or not, Andrea?
Um, not,
Okay.
not.
I see something in here around fundraising. Like if this was done with purpose, like for a school, and you could prove it, and this would be the way to prove it, maybe there's an angle here. But kids kind of resist this level of, it's a real life shackle, isn't it? Like,
Well, kids feel like they're going to be monitored, right? So they don't even like their parents telling them which apps they can and can't have on if they have a phone. Um, the readouts are interesting, but it seems like something that adults thought of for kids, not something that is really natural and organic for kids. That's my take on hot or not.
this is a really good co-creation experiment. If you had kids design it, I wonder what they would produce, right?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. The Lego Play Lab is always interesting. I always follow what they're doing, Lego, excuse me, because you always think that you know what creativity and play is until you watch what actually happens when it comes organically from the kids. So this is a good co-creation one. Let's throw this into the co-creation concept.
There you go. Sleep fitness, we've talked about kids fitness, brain fitness, and so just, particularly for sports where you're actually trying to vision things ahead of actually playing them in real life sports. This one's intelligent, and I'm a Canadian, so I put hockey on, but there's football and baseball and a whole whackload of different sports, and it just trains your mind to see things in a certain way. Hot or not, Andrea?
This is strangely super hot, and maybe it's the last conversation had. And one of the people that I'm describing, I'll keep it, I won't identify it too much, but a friend just spent a week in a brain lab. And this is incredible. It's like going to a brain spa where they're hooked up with electrodes to figure out peak performance for their brain. And it's different moods and different capabilities and acuity and intellect. And I, I mean, I won't go into who runs it, but there are workout places and spa type places for brain training. And I would have thought it was very strange and fringe, but I'm hearing it more and more. And so once again, it might be that it's the last person I talked to and it seems like a good idea. But yeah, I think that there have always been things like biofeedback and ways of tracing and training. But I think that it's probably gotten a lot more refined. And I think that it's something that will come of age.
Brain's biggest muscle out there, so why not exercise it, right? And I will use two words to say why this should be a hot trend if it isn't. Tom Brady. How is it a 45-year-old quarterback can completely spin circles around most of the other quarterbacks that are out there of much better, even though he's in great shape, he's 45. I think we all see the advancing signs of age, and yet he's still at the top of his game, and probably a lot of it has to deal with this.
Well, I'll say one word on that: golf. I mean, if
Right.
there's ever something where your brain is such a large percentage of how you perform, you got to keep your brain in good state for that sport.
As somebody that's had the putting yips before, yes, I highly agree. And last couple ones here, metabolism. So we've got to the point now where we can look in a non-invasive way based on your breath to know what we're breathing out is fat or carbs, and whether that's ideal, and when's the next time you should be working out because it's the right ratio of whatever to whatever. Hot or not, Andrea?
Super hot. The
Okay.
the idea of, yeah, so the same way that we are learning through medicine that personalized medicine is the only way to do it, because there's no generic disease where every single factor in every single individual is going to be treated equally with the same drugs or treatments. I think it's really interesting, and I'm completely convinced that we have different types of people, and there's not one way of judging clearly, calories or food, or people's metabolisms are so individual, and large people, small people, there's all kinds of ways that we can finally stop being generic and start being effective.
I agree. I think this, knowing a little bit of what Lumen's done here, for the sake of the people listening to this on a podcast, we're showing this company called Lumen that has a device that they can hack your metabolism. I think this may be the first era of this, in that it gets a little bit smarter as we go on this. So hot-ish, I guess, would be my grade. And then you mentioned it already, Calm, right? It's one of the biggest apps out there. We deal in a world of stress. It's constantly at us. And so, I'm showing 6 different things that they offer in terms of calm and mental fitness. Andrea, hot or not?
Hot.
Okay.
Not only because celebrities are behind it, because that's not something that I usually care about. And not only because my healthcare company gave it to us as a 1-year trial for free, but because to me, the understanding that, especially I've noticed this in COVID, that if you're anxious, you can't perform. And the fact that we now know that there are things like bedtime stories, ways to get ahead of your sleep patterns. This is actually the intervention that I like better than the Fitbit. So a Fitbit's fine, but if you can't do anything about it, it's more anxiety.
Yeah.
And so if you have a sense of a diagnostic with an approach to cure it or to treat it, I think that's where we can start to be more hopeful and really make a big difference. So I'd rather have 80% something like Calm, where you have a plan for how you change your lifestyle, than a bunch of numbers that are just going to make me more anxious about what's wrong.
It's interesting. Also interesting, in the recent election, stateside, Calm had some type of integrated promotion with CNN. So, and they were probably spot on. The moment I hear Wolf Blitzer talking about anything good, bad, or indifferent, the moment is I probably have a raised heart rate. So, so smart from the Calm people. This one I thought was amazing. I didn't know we were that far ahead in terms of the technology, but the weight scale we've lived with for 100 years, and it's been a pretty dumb understanding of, okay, we go up 5 pounds, is that good or bad? This one goes after your 3D body scanning. It's called Naked, and based on visuals and standing on something, I believe, it can actually measure your progress on 9 different measurements and a whole bunch of different other stuff. Hot or not, Andrew?
I'll let you go first on this one, Sean. Hot or not, Sean?
I do like it. I think weight and even body weight, body weight ratios tend to be very dumb metrics for a world that's advanced many, many years since those became the standard. So it's true. It's the test, and whether you're fit or not, is when you're looking at the mirror in the morning, whether you like what you're seeing staring back. And so this speaks to me, this one.
Well, the analogy that I have, and I might have that, hold that metaphor moment, hold that analogy moment. But the metaphor that I have is some research that you and I were looking at in the retirement industry, because people can't picture saving because they can't picture what the end result is. One day you will be in a place where you have X amount of revenue and you can pay X amount of bills, and that's your future. And so people can't get there because they don't have a clear sense of a destination. They only have the frustration of giving up something today without any clear sense of where it's going to lead tomorrow. And so to me, that is an analogy for this. If I know that there is a better body ahead, and that what I did today has an impact on that, psychologically, it's something much different from a set of metrics that is numbers. You are this pound and you'd like to be that pound, or you are this strong and you'd like to be this strong, and body the ratio of fat in your body is this, and you'd like it to be that. To me, it's a holistic way of picturing a whole new you that I think psychologically has been impossible to really replicate until now. And that's why I think it's a really hopeful idea. I think it's halfway there, but I think it's hopeful.
You like to see the tie between, okay, if you're going to expose a body, it's like, tell me how to get that body, or at least give me the path there, right? So last couple here, genomics, and this one was an interesting one because it speaks to the types of activities that you might like. It's a company called AFGene. And so, a lot of different insights. I think you pay for some of those insights. So I guess it's like a Jenny Craig almost in terms of that. But it takes your genetic, much as, 23andMe and Ancestry does, but it does it from an athletic standpoint. Andrea, hot or not?
Yeah, super hot. There's no question that it's what I said earlier, that personalized medicine is, the time has come. First of all, a lot of the studies are done on people if they're done on a male with, 6'2", what does that mean in terms of dosage for a woman 5'2"? So that's part of it. But even more so, the genomics, why not use science well to feel better and live longer?
Yeah.
No brainer, hot.
Done. And then we'll go through these quickly. I know we've got 5 minutes left in our webcast. This was an interesting one out of, I want to say, Colombia. I just thought it was so super smart. Like, you've got things that you can control, maybe on things on a bike. There's so many of us. You're actually in Denmark today, so there's so many people riding bikes, and there's a safety risk when you're right next to cars. Why not have a helmet that actually is functional and actually does front and rear lights and turn signals and brakes, and does the same thing cars does from the, I think it's triggered by your fingertips, but it may be actually linked to your bike. I'm trying to remember this one. It's called Unit 1 Faro helmet. Hot or not?
Hot.
Yeah, I think so. If it saves one life, it's hot. And then this one was interesting. A lot of tennis players, you strap this up on the tennis net, and all of a sudden, all of your details around your tennis play, the speed of your serve, what was your first serve percentage, all of it gets tracked. And that every time you go to a club that has one of these, you can track in. So it moves from club to club. Hot or not, Andrea?
It's
Not
a gimmick. It's a
not a
gimmick.
tennis player.
I'll
Eh?
say it's a gimmick.
I saw one of the digital readouts. It's called Wingfield, and I was like, if I was a tennis player, I'd probably be curious about that. It's the same thing that you get on TV broadcasts, and it's like, oh, well, if I could get that in my personal life, that'd be great. And then trainer-wise, I'm just going to say, generally, personal trainers have not been the most digital of people. There's now a company that actually puts everything in a digitized version, so it's kind of like a full-on operating system for the industry. Hot or not, Andrew?
Super hot.
Okay. Oh, and finally, My Sport Market, which is out of Paris. It takes some of your old sports equipment and clothes and puts it into the sustainability mill. And so you're just not getting rid of your running shoes or your old kiteboard or whatever. You're bringing it back into the marketplace. Hot or not, Andrew?
I think it's evolving. What's your thought first? I'll let you go first on this one.
I know Patagonia has made a lot of thoughts in this area. I think there are certain types of equipment that I think this is really hot for. Running shoes, I find running shoes, the price of a running shoe isn't so high that people want to use a second pair, right? Like they probably just want to buy new. So unfortunately, probably not hot enough.
I would look probably to the large companies like the Adidas and the Nikes that are already doing these kinds of things to lead the way. And I was actually very surprised when Walmart was in one of the first leaders in sustainability, 10 years ago or whatever. So I feel like there needs to be cradle to grave, just actually circular economy approach. And I think you need bigger players. So I would not vote on a startup. I would probably bet on the large companies to have the end to end.
Gamified fitness, yes or no? Let's just
Not for me.
I'm big on gamification, so give me a competition, and I would love to see it. I think we've covered off the pandemic, and I think we've covered off a lot of the ongoing kind of generational or decade-long type of trends here. I'm going to skip through all of these. Maybe one last one: new sport of the future. Any thoughts? This was drone jumping. This could be something that could be the future. Any thoughts on something that you're still begging to see, Andrea?
I do think it's going to be drones. And I'm laughing because every single time I would do an entrepreneurship group or a hackathon, everything started with a drone and I would always laugh. But I think the drones, there's something about drones. Yesterday, I saw someone doing what do you call it? What is it called?
Walking,
Kite,
running.
no, kite surfing. Sorry, kite surfing. But it was kite surfing with an engine, so they kind of like went up all of a sudden, and I'm like, that's interesting. That's something new. Yeah, so I think that a new sport of the future would have to do with somehow drones coming down and being able to take pictures of what you're doing and carry you somewhere, kind of like a zip line, but with drones. Yeah, definitely, because they're so portable.
I do think it's ironic, though, that of the top 10 sports that we follow, they've pretty much stayed the same for the last century, up or down. Like I could argue UFC might be one of the sports that has broken through, maybe some of the board sports like snowboarding, but we're still talking 30, 40 years. So I think, we're a more innovative time. We should probably have more innovation around what is that sport that's going to be different in the future. Maybe esports is it, but I'm not too
It's
sure.
going to be flying cars. It's something, individual mobility with flight. That's what I think.
Just to close this out, we are going to spend the next 3 months exploring some of these questions that we've teased out today in terms of innovation, the future, and technology in sports. We're calling it Digiball. If you're interested, please get in touch with us at hello@futureproofingnext.com. We've had 2 previous webcasts today. We're going to try to pop these up by next week, and you will have a collection of 3 things that tears through the entire space. Join with us at futureproofingnext.com, and we will definitely, once we've got them out, we'll get them part of our FN Vault. And for those on podcast, I'm not swearing, that is the FN Vault. Andrea, speak to this one.
Yeah, well, we're excited. We have a book that's been launching in the most unusual way possible. It is the virtual book tour. And so next week, we've done North America, we've done Europe, and next week we are doing Asia. Not doing all of China, but we are doing Asia. And so super excited. We have a panelist who is one of our clients from Tokyo. And we are going to figure out how people future-proof next in Asia. And we really would love for you to join us. It's going to be a great exchange of ideas and cross-border conversations about innovation and what's hot and what's not there.
Really, we're leaning on our community as well, because as much as we do have kind of global scope, we know less people in parts like Asia and Africa and South America, and so we'd love it if you know people there to get involved as well. And the last one on our regular webcast cycle of twice a month, our next webcast is episode number 22, and we'll be talking about the top 20 customer trends and drivers. And believe me, they are quite different than last year, so you'll want to tune into that. It's 11 o'clock. Tuesday, November 24th. Andrea, any parting thoughts on, we've had a full day of this. You're in a different continent now. You've done yeoman's work just trying to patch in and show up, never mind participate. Thoughts on what we've covered today?
I think sport and all of the topics we've talked about, it's a universal human desire to move, to connect with other people, to live long lives, to really feel well and be active. So to me, it started off as sport, kind of, competitive sport, kind of a traditional mindset. But now that we've been through all of this, I'm really excited about all of the ways that these insights cross over, not just for the sports themselves, but for all kinds of industries that I think are going to be game changing. Hot.
Yes, hot, definitely hot. We hotted most of the stuff today, so I guess we picked right. But no, it is interesting, the parallels. But we've gone past the hour now, so I guess we will shut it down. And as always, Andrea, I'll let you close this out. What do we always tell people as we close our Future Proofing Next and Now podcasts?
See you in the future.
Bye, everybody.